Over the last few weeks, as Bitcoin's price has started to get a little bit more shaky, leaving many of us to wonder what is going to happen, I've consistently held on to the fact that I don't think the worst case scenario for Bitcoin this year is even that bad. Moreover, I actually think that it would be a pretty good buying opportunity, so even when Bitcoin does show signs that it might crash, it doesn't scare me at all. And in today's video, what I wanted to do is share with you my realistic worst case scenario for Bitcoin this year. Not obviously going to 0 or 10,000 or anything, that's just unrealistic in my opinion. A realistic price prediction for if all hell breaks loose, things get ugly, things get bad, where is Bitcoin going? And so with that said, hopefully this helps allow you to ease your mind a bit, even in the moments where we see red, because it's probably not going to be that bad if we do see this thing start to really pull back towards the downside. So with that in mind, let's get into it. So looking at Bitcoin here, what we can see is that its price, again, it has been pretty stagnant over the last few days. But if you do look at this thing from a macro perspective, you'll actually come to realize that it's been pretty stagnant for even longer than that, quite a while, realistically. I mean, if we just remove our drawings and look, Bitcoin's price itself has been within this little sideways consolidationary channel ever since March of this year, which is coming up on about 2.5 to 3 months of putting in this type of sideways movement. Now, in the moments that this happens, okay, generally speaking, you aren't going to see this thing crash to the downside. Generally, that's actually not what happens. Generally, during a bull market, especially during the earlier stages of a bull market, you will get that move towards the upside. That's just normally what happens. Now, I'm not saying it happens from right here. I'm saying that we might pull back and do that and then that and this and that and this, that, boom, and then break up to the upside, right? But eventually, you will generally get this move to the upside. So even from a scale of probabilities, you're probably not going to see this thing crash. But even if you do see it crash, where would it go from something like this? That's the question. The worst case scenario after building something like this. Well, looking at Bitcoin from this perspective, what I do want to go ahead and say is we have quite clearly started to put in the possible early framework for what many people would call an M-top or a double top. Okay, we have seen these before. We have seen these on a macro perspective, and we have seen them play out for Bitcoin in a macro perspective. So it would be foolish to say that it's not possible for this to play out. It's just not as likely, not this early into the cycle. Okay, the halving was just 2 months ago, right? So generally, you're not going to see this happen, but hey, at the end of the day, it is possible. Now, the question realistically becomes, what happens if this is a double top? I think that's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario for Bitcoin is that this plays out to actually be a double top and we break towards the downside of this target back towards the downside. Now, under the circumstance in which you have a double top, all you need to do to find your distance, okay, or quite simply just your breakout zones, where the price should go, is you're going to take the distance from the top, okay, this little area here, boom, and you're going to drag that line all the way down to this little point right here. Now, this point right here is called the MLS, okay, it looks like this, MLS. This is the mid-level support zone, okay, and what the MLS stands for is the mid-level support between your two peaks of the double top, this and this. Now, this little level right here, the MLS, is incredibly important because it's not only going to serve as your very last point of support, but it actually can help determine your breakout zone. And so again, what I said you're going to do is you're going to take the distance from the top of your double top to this MLS and apply that distance to the bottom of your MLS, and that's your breakout target. Generally speaking, when double tops break to the downside, that distance is the same distance they will put in from the moment they lose the support until they start to try to find some support again. So maybe something like this. Okay, this is generally what that would look like. And the greatest part about that is that even if this does turn out to be a double top, and even if we do see this thing starting to go into this pullback or sideways movement or whatever it is, right? Something like, something like this over the rest of the year, that puts Bitcoin only coming back down towards $42,000. And what I want to ask you is that in the grand scheme of things, if this worst case scenario does play out, is this realistically all that bad? Based off of what we saw back here, right, before we put in that final move to the upside, based off of what we saw back here, when the little thingy started spreading around the world, right? This and this. Is it realistically that bad if something like this happens? Probably not. What's more realistic is that something like that would happen. We'd find some support and then look for the rest of the parabolic rally towards the end of the year. Now, I'm not saying we're going to 250. I think we're probably going to, 120 to 150. I think somewhere in here is more realistic. But is this realistically that bad? No, I don't think so at all. All of our purchases that we've made for the majority, we basically made all up until this year would still be positive. The majority of dollar cost averaging that we did during the bear market would still be positive. And realistically, our gains would diminish a little bit, but we would get even more buying opportunities to buy this Bitcoin, of course, at lower prices, as well as most of your altcoins, probably 40 to 50% lower than they are right now. And so because of that, I don't think that this is that scary. To me, this would be a fantastic opportunity, and there's this deep down piece of me that hopes it happens. And so because of that, guys, that is the worst case scenario for me. I don't see Bitcoin playing out much worse than that. I don't see Bitcoin hitting 30,000 again this year. I don't see it hitting the 20s, and I surely don't see it hitting the 10s. I think there's maybe a 20% chance we hit the low 30,000 range, 10% chance that we hit the low 20,000 range, maybe 2 to 3% chance that we head into the teens again. I just don't think that's going to happen, personally speaking. And so because of this, I don't think this is that bad. I think this would honestly be a good opportunity, and I would be looking to dollar cost average substantially if this does happen. Now, this is something that's on the table, right? I can't give you a percentage chance of how, if this happens, because we have no history. There's no data to support if this is going to happen or not. But quite simply, what I would go ahead and say is I think that this is not that likely, but it is a possibility. And because of that, yes, I have still been taking some profits off the table at these peaks, at these highs, in these moments where we're getting overextended. Yes, I have been taking profits off the table because you never know when you'll be able to re-inject them a little bit lower. And so because of that, although I am not scared that this is going to happen, I have prepared for this to happen by taking some profits off the table and preparing my levels of support in which I would be looking to dollar cost average if this happens, so I could stay calm in a moment in which this does happen. So overall, guys, that's my worst case scenario. I mean, that's literally the worst thing that I think could happen this year to Bitcoin. So that's why in these moments where it pulls back, I don't really care. I don't really get scared. And it's not something that I even really think about all too much. And so I wanted to share that with you. Hopefully that eases your mind. Let me know down in the comments, what's your worst case scenario? Where do you think that this thing could realistically go this year? Let us know down in the comments below. And while you are down there, make sure you do like this video so more people see it, and hopefully it eases their minds as well. But I hope you guys did enjoy today's vid, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace out, everybody.